Millionaire visits diner and freezes when he sees waitress identical to his ex-wife. Richard Thompson pulled up his imported car in front of the modest diner in Chinatown, New York City, desperately needing a strong coffee to ease the headache that had plagued him since morning. As he pushed open the glass door and heard the bell announce his arrival, his eyes landed on a waitress in a grey uniform pouring coffee behind the counter. The world seemed to stop when he saw her face, identical to Catherine's, the woman who had shattered his heart into 1,000 pieces 15 years ago. "Good morning, sir. Table or counter?" the young woman asked with a professional smile. Richard couldn't answer right away. His legs trembled. His heart raced as if he'd just run a marathon. It was impossible. Catherine had died in an accident 10 years ago. He had attended the funeral himself. "Sir, are you okay?" the waitress pressed, genuine concern now in her eyes. "Table, please," he managed to say, his voice hoarse. She guided him to a table by the window, her graceful movements stirring painful memories, the same slight tilt of her head, the same way of walking. Even the small mark near her upper lip was identical. "Black coffee, no sugar," he ordered before she could even offer the menu. The waitress raised an eyebrow, surprised. "How did you know we have the best black coffee in the area?" Richard swallowed hard. Catherine had always said the same thing about every place she worked. He glanced at the name tag pinned to her uniform. Emily Wilson. Emily, not Catherine. But how could two people look so uncannily alike? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers out. Now back to the story. As he waited for his coffee, Richard couldn't take his eyes off the young woman as she tended to other customers. Every gesture, every smile, every movement was a stab of longing and confusion. Mrs. Jenkins, the diner's owner, a sturdy woman with silver hair tied in a bun, noticed the distinguished customer who seemed hypnotized by her newest employee. "Emily is a wonderful girl," she remarked as she passed his table. "She's worked here for 3 years, never missed a single day." 3 years, Richard murmured. "Do you know her from somewhere? I saw how surprised you looked when you saw her." Richard hesitated. How could he explain that this waitress was the perfect copy of his long-lost love? "She reminds me of someone," he replied vaguely. Mrs. Jenkins smiled knowingly. "It happens. Sometimes we meet people who look like others. Emily always says she has one of those common faces." "Common face?" Richard almost laughed. Catherine had the most extraordinary face he'd ever seen. Those golden-flecked brown eyes, the delicate nose, the perfectly shaped lips. Nothing about her was common. Emily returned with the coffee, carefully setting the cup on the table. "Anything else, sir?" "How long have you lived in New York City?" he blurted out. She seemed taken aback by the personal question, but answered politely. "My whole life. I was born and raised right here in the neighborhood." Richard felt a pang of disappointment. Catherine was from rural Pennsylvania. She had only moved to New York after they married. "Sorry for asking. It's just, you remind me so much of someone." Emily shrugged with a half smile. "People say I have a common face. I've been mistaken for lots of folks." There it was again, that same phrase. Richard took a sip of coffee to mask the whirlwind of emotions. The strong, bitter taste grounded him. This wasn't Catherine. Catherine was dead. He had seen the casket lowered, had thrown dirt over it. But how could he explain the impossible resemblance? For the rest of the week, Richard found himself returning to the diner every day, always at the same time, always ordering the same black coffee. The other regulars had started noticing his presence, the well-dressed executive who seemed out of place among the neighborhood workers and retirees who made up the usual clientele. Emily served him with professionalism, but Richard sensed a growing discomfort in her gestures. She began avoiding prolonged eye contact, hurrying when she served him. On Friday, she finally confronted him. "Excuse me, Mr. Thompson." Yes, she had learned his name from Mrs. Jenkins. "Can I be honest with you?" Richard nodded, bracing himself for the worst. "Your stares are making me uncomfortable. I know you said I remind you of someone, but—" "Catherine," he interrupted, You're identical to my ex-wife, Catherine. Emily blinked, processing the information. Ex-wife? She died 10 years ago. It's like she's come back. Silence stretched between them. Emily pulled out a chair and sat down. Her shift was almost over anyway. That must be hard for you, she said finally, her voice gentle. Losing someone and then seeing someone who looks so much like them. You don't understand. It's not just a resemblance. It's identical. Every detail, every mannerism. Emily bit her lower lip, another gesture typical of Catherine when she was deep in thought. Maybe you should seek help, Mr. Thompson. This can't be healthy. He laughed bitterly. You think I'm crazy. I didn't say that, but grief does strange things to our perception. Richard took out his wallet and removed an old photo preserved for years. He slid it across the table. Emily picked it up, and Richard saw the exact moment understanding hit her. Her face paled, her hands trembling slightly. My God, she whispered, it's me. It looks exactly like me. Now, do you understand? Emily studied the photo for long minutes, searching for differences. The woman in the picture wore a yellow summer dress, smiling at the camera with genuine joy. In the background, a beach Richard would never forget. Key West, their last happy trip together, before everything fell apart. When was this taken? 18 years ago. 3 years before she passed. Emily carefully returned the photo. It's unsettling, I admit, but coincidences happen. Were you adopted? The question slipped out before he could stop himself. Emily recoiled as if slapped. How did you know that? Richard's heart raced. A guess. I'm sorry if... I was, as a baby. My parents never hid it from me. The puzzle pieces began shifting in Richard's mind, forming patterns he didn't dare fully contemplate. Do you know anything about your birth parents? Emily crossed her arms defensively. Why does that matter? Please, it's important. She sighed deeply. Very little. My birth mother was young, couldn't raise me. It was a closed adoption, no contact. The date. When were you born? March 15th, 1996. Richard did the math quickly. Emily would have been conceived around June 1995, exactly when Catherine had disappeared for 2 weeks, claiming she needed to visit a sick aunt in Pennsylvania. He'd never questioned it. He'd trusted her completely back then. Mr. Thompson, you look pale. I need to go, he said abruptly, leaving a $50 bill on the table. Thanks for the coffee. He hurried out, leaving Emily confused and concerned. In the car, Richard gripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to organize his thoughts. It was madness. Catherine had never mentioned a pregnancy. They'd tried for years to have children without success. It was one of the reasons their marriage had fallen apart. But what if? He spent the weekend tormented by doubts and possibilities. On Monday, he returned to the diner, determined to uncover the truth. Emily greeted him with visible apprehension. I didn't think you'd come back. We need to talk. Please. I'm working. I'll pay for your time. It's important. Mrs. Jenkins, sensing the tension, stepped in. Emily, take a break. Brenda will cover your shift. Reluctantly, Emily followed him to a more secluded table at the back of the diner. I need to know more about your adoption, Richard began bluntly. Why? What does this have to do with your ex-wife? Richard took a deep breath. Catherine and I were married for 8 years. We tried to have children, but she had trouble getting pregnant, or at least that's what the doctors said. And? In June 1995, she disappeared for 2 weeks, said she was caring for a sick aunt. I never questioned it. But doing the math... Emily's eyes widened as she understood the implication. No, that's absurd. Are you suggesting that Catherine might have been pregnant and hid it from me? That you could be... Stop! Emily stood abruptly. This is insane. My birth mother's name was Jennifer, not Catherine. I have the adoption papers. Papers can lie. Why would she hide a pregnancy from her own husband? Richard lowered his gaze, ashamed. Because maybe the child wasn't mine. A heavy silence fell between them. Emily sat back down, processing the information. Are you saying your wife had an affair? I'm not sure. Our relationship was strained at the time. I worked too much, traveled constantly. Catherine felt alone, abandoned. Even so, hiding an entire pregnancy. She came back different after those 2 weeks. More distant, melancholic. I chalked it up to stress, the problems we were facing. Emily ran her hands over her face, clearly overwhelmed. Mr. Thompson, I understand your pain, but I can't be your long-lost daughter, or whatever you're imagining. It's just a cruel coincidence. We could do a DNA test. No! Her reply was immediate and vehement. I won't indulge this fantasy. I have parents who love me, an established life. I don't need this. But if there's a chance of what? Discovering my whole life has been a lie? That the woman who died 10 years ago was my mother and abandoned me? Richard heard the pain in her voice, the fear behind the anger. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause you distress. Emily softened her tone. Look, I get that you're hurting. Losing someone we love is devastating, but you can't project that onto me. You're right, Richard admitted. I let myself get carried away by the resemblance, the coincidence of the dates. I'm sorry. Emily lightly touched his hand on the table, a gesture of compassion. How about this? You keep coming for your coffee. We chat like acquaintances and leave the past where it belongs. Richard agreed, though his heart screamed there was more to the story. In the weeks that followed, they settled into a cautious routine. Richard came in the mornings, drank his coffee and exchanged pleasantries about the weather, the news, the diner's bustle. Emily gradually relaxed, even sharing small details about her life. He learned she studied business at night, dreamed of opening her own shop one day. She lived with her adoptive parents, George and Martha Wilson, in a modest apartment a few blocks away. She had a boyfriend, Jason, a mechanic at a nearby garage. Each revelation was bittersweet for Richard. On one hand, he was glad to know her better. On the other, it hurt to see how complete her life was without him, without any connection to Catherine or their shared past. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. One morning, Emily wasn't at the diner. Brenda, the other waitress, said she hadn't shown up, which was extremely rare. She called saying there was a family emergency, Brenda explained. Mrs. Jenkins was worried. Emily never misses work. Richard felt an inexplicable unease. After much hesitation, he decided to stop by the address Emily had casually mentioned. The building was old but well kept, typical of middle-class New York City. He rang the intercom for apartment 42. Who is it? An elderly woman's voice answered. It's Richard Thompson, a friend of Emily's. Is she okay? There was a pause. You'd better come up. The apartment was small but cozy. Martha Wilson, a white-haired woman with kind eyes, greeted him with obvious concern. Emily told us about you, she said, leading him to the living room. About your resemblance to your late wife. Richard was surprised Emily had shared that with her parents. I came because she didn't show up for work. I was worried. Martha sighed heavily. Last night, we got a call. A woman wanting to speak to Emily about her birth mother. Richard's heart raced. What did she say? That she had important information about the circumstances of the adoption. Emily was deeply shaken. She's been in her room ever since, refusing to come out. Can I talk to her? Martha hesitated, then nodded. Maybe it'll help. She trusts you despite everything. She knocked lightly on the bedroom door. Emily? It's me, Richard. Silence. Please, I just want to know if you're okay. The door opened slowly. Emily's eyes were red from crying, her face drawn. Why did you come? I was worried. Your mother told me about the call. Emily returned to the bed, sitting cross-legged. Richard stayed by the door, respecting her space. The woman said she knew my birth mother, that her name wasn't Jennifer. Richard felt his blood run cold. What else did she say? That my mother died 10 years ago, but before that, she left a letter for me. That they only just managed to find me. Richard's legs weakened. He leaned against the doorframe. Emily? It was Catherine, wasn't it? Tears streamed down her face. Your ex-wife. That's why I look so much like her." Richard couldn't answer, the lump in his throat choking his words. "All these years," Emily continued, "she abandoned me, and you didn't even know I existed." "I swear I didn't know," he managed to say finally. "Catherine never—" "I'm meeting that woman tomorrow. I need to know the truth, no matter how much it hurts. I'll go with you." "No." The rejection was immediate. "This is something I have to do alone. Emily, please. If it's true, if I'm your daughter—" The word came out with difficulty. "We'll need to process this. But right now, I have to do it my way." Richard respected her decision, though every fiber of his being wanted to protect her, to be by her side. The next day, he anxiously waited for news. Emily had taken the day off from the diner, and Richard spent the hours in his office unable to focus on any task. The phone rang at 3 in the afternoon. "Richard?" Emily's voice was shaky. "Can you meet me? I'm at Central Park near the lake." He drove, breaking every speed limit. He found her sitting on a bench, watching the ducks on the lake. Beside her, an old shoebox. "What did you find out?" he asked softly, sitting next to her. Emily handed him the box without a word. Inside was a sealed envelope with her name, photos, and documents. With trembling hands, Richard opened the letter. Catherine's handwriting hit him like a punch to the gut. "My dearest daughter, if you're reading this, it means I never found the courage to look for you in life. Forgive me for that, as for so many other things. You were conceived in a moment of weakness and despair. Richard and I were drifting apart, our marriage crumbling. I found comfort in another man's arms, someone who made me feel alive again. When I discovered I was pregnant, I panicked. I couldn't destroy Richard with the truth, nor could I pretend you were his. Cowardice won. I made up the story about the sick aunt and spent the final months of the pregnancy in hiding, supported by your biological father. He died in a car accident when you were just 2 months old. Without the financial or emotional means to raise you alone, and unable to return to Richard with another man's child, I made the hardest decision of my life. I gave you up for adoption, on the condition that you'd go to a loving family. I followed your life from afar for years, through the social worker. I know you were loved, that you had the happy childhood I couldn't give you. Richard never knew. I carried this secret like a cross. When I found out about the illness, I thought about reaching out, but once again, cowardice won. How could I explain? How could I ask for forgiveness? I'm leaving this letter and some photos of you as a baby. It's all I kept, all I allowed myself to have, myself. If you ever meet Richard, know he's a good man. He wasn't to blame for my mistakes. Forgive me, my daughter, I was a coward to the end. With eternal love, Catherine, your birth mother. Richard finished reading with tears streaming freely. Emily wept silently beside him. She lied to both of us, Emily finally said. She was afraid. Richard tried to defend, though his own pain was immense. Catherine was always afraid of confrontation, of disappointment. Do you forgive her? Richard thought for a long time. I don't know, part of me understands. Our marriage was already bad. I neglected her, prioritized work. But hiding a child... I'm not your daughter, Emily reminded him gently. Biologically, we have no connection. But you're hers, and I loved her for 8 years. That creates a bond, doesn't it? Emily smiled sadly. I suppose it does. They sat in silence, watching life go on in the park. Families strolling, children playing, couples in love. Life moving forward with cruel normalcy, while their world had been turned upside down. What do we do now? Emily asked. I don't know. What do you want to do? Part of me wants to pretend none of this happened, go back to my normal life, my parents, my job. And the other part wants to know more about her, about you. Understand where I come from, even if it hurts. Richard made a decision. I have photos, videos, a whole life documented with Catherine. If you want, I can share them, but only if and when you're ready. Emily nodded, carefully tucking the box away. I need time to process, to talk to my parents. Take all the time you need." They stood to leave. Before parting, Emily surprised him with a quick hug. "Thank you for not giving up, for insisting even when I resisted. Thank you for letting me be part of this, even though I'm not your father." The truth had been revealed, but it brought more questions than answers. How do they move forward? How do they build a relationship born from lies and secrets? In the weeks that followed, Emily and Richard navigated this new territory carefully. She kept working at the diner, he kept having his morning coffee. But now there was a different understanding between them. George and Martha Wilson, Emily's adoptive parents, reacted with understandable concern. Richard made sure to meet them, to assure them he had no intention of interfering or taking their place. "You're her real parents," he said during a tense dinner at the Wilsons' apartment. "You gave her love, education, values. I'm just a connection to the past." George, a simple but wise man, replied, "The heart has room for many kinds of love, Mr. Thompson. Emily can honor her roots without forgetting her wings." Gradually, they found a balance. Emily began visiting Richard occasionally, looking through photo albums, hearing stories about Catherine. She discovered she'd inherited her mother's talent for music, the same quirky sense of humor, the same stubbornness. She played guitar. Emily was surprised to see a photo of Catherine at a recital. "Beautifully. He used to play for me when we were dating. I play too. I taught myself, never understood where that interest came from." Small revelations like these built bridges between past and present. Emily discovered that Catherine's love for plants explained her own obsession with keeping a small garden on the balcony, that Catherine's habit of biting her lip when concentrating was exactly hers. Jason, Emily's boyfriend, struggled to accept the situation. "It's weird," he admitted during an argument. "This wealthy man showing up out of nowhere wanting to be part of your life. He doesn't want to be my father, Jason. He just wants to honor Catherine's memory by sharing stories." "What if he wants more? What if he tries to pull you away from us, from your life here?" Emily cupped her boyfriend's face in her hands. "My life is here, with you, with my parents, with my job. Richard is just a window to understanding where I came from." But Jason remained suspicious, creating tension in their relationship. One day, Richard made a surprising offer. "I'm opening a branch of my company in Pennsylvania. I need someone to manage the administrative side. I thought of you." Emily nearly choked on her coffee. "Richard, you don't have to give me a job. I don't want charity." "It's not charity. You're graduating in business. You have customer service experience. You're dedicated and responsible. Those are real qualifications. People will talk, let them. The question is, do you want the opportunity?" Emily thought about her dreams, how much she earned at the diner, the tuition her parents struggled to pay. "Mrs. Jenkins would be lost without me. Train someone, give proper notice. I'm not asking you to abandon anything, just to consider an opportunity." Emily's decision to accept the job sent ripples through her life. Jason saw it as confirmation of his suspicions. Mrs. Jenkins was sad but understanding, and her parents were torn between pride and worry. "Are you sure about this, sweetheart?" Martha asked while helping her pack for the new office. "It's an amazing opportunity, Mom. I'll get to apply what I'm learning, gain real experience." "And Richard?" "He'll be in New York City. We'll only see each other at monthly meetings." But Emily knew it wasn't that simple. Her connection with Richard had grown beyond the professional. It wasn't paternal love. He wasn't her father. But there was a deep affection, a mutual understanding born from shared loss. The new routine brought challenges. Emily proved herself at work, earning her colleagues' respect on merit. But rumors about her connection to the boss circulated. During a particularly tough meeting, an older manager insinuated she'd gotten the job through other means. Emily kept her professional composure, but Richard noticed her clenched fists under the table. "Mr. Anderson," Richard intervened calmly, "the numbers Miss Wilson presented speak for themselves. If you have concerns about competence, I suggest you base them on facts, not assumptions." After the meeting, Emily confronted him. "You don't have to defend me. I can handle myself." "I know, but I won't tolerate disrespect toward any employee, especially based on baseless gossip. The gossip isn't entirely baseless. There is a connection between us. A personal connection that doesn't interfere with professionalism. You earned this position, Emily. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Her relationship with Jason ended on a rainy winter night. He'd been drinking, showed up at her apartment making accusations. You've changed. Ever since that man appeared, you're not the same. Jason, you're drunk. Let's talk tomorrow. No. Let's talk now. Do you think I'm stupid? I know you spend more time with him than with me. It's my job. It's more than that, and you know it. He buys you expensive gifts, takes you to fancy lunches. They're work meetings. With the man who was married to your birth mother? How convenient. The argument escalated until Emily asked him to leave. The breakup was inevitable, but it still hurt. Jason had been part of her life for 3 years. Richard noticed her sadness at their next meeting. Do you want to talk about it? Jason and I broke up. I'm sorry. Was it my fault? Emily asked suddenly. Taking the job, changing my life. Jason said I changed. You grew up. You discovered things about yourself, about your roots. Change isn't necessarily bad. Sometimes I feel like I'm betraying my parents, you know? They gave me everything, and now I'm here, building this connection with you because of Catherine. Richard chose his words carefully. Your parents gave you strong roots. That's why you can explore your wings without fear of getting lost. They know that. A year had passed since that first meeting at the diner. Emily had established herself professionally, earning respect and independence. Her relationship with Richard had deepened into a unique friendship. One Saturday afternoon, Emily sought him out with a determined expression. I want to visit her grave. Richard didn't need to ask who she meant. Are you sure? I need closure to say goodbye properly. They went together to Greenwood Cemetery on a clear Sunday morning. Catherine's grave was simple, well kept. Richard still paid for its upkeep. Catherine Davis Thompson, 1967-2015. Forever loved. Emily read the inscription aloud. I chose those words before I knew about you, Richard explained. Now they seem even more fitting. Emily placed the flowers she'd brought. Daisies, Catherine's favorite, according to Richard. Hi, Mom, she began hesitantly. It feels strange calling you that, but that's who you are, isn't it? Richard stepped back discreetly, giving her privacy. Emily continued, the words flowing more easily now. I spent so much time angry. At you for leaving me. At myself for existing and complicating your life. But Richard helped me understand. You did what you thought was best with what you had. Tears streamed silently down her face. I had wonderful parents. George and Martha gave me unconditional love, but I always felt an emptiness, you know. Now I understand what it was. It was you, the part of me that comes from you. She gently touched the headstone. I forgive you, Mom, for everything, and I hope wherever you are you found peace. She stayed a few more minutes in silence, then rejoined Richard. Thank you for bringing me here. Thank you for letting me come with you. They walked slowly back through the cemetery paths. Richard, can I ask you something personal? Of course. You never remarried after Catherine? Richard sighed. I dated a few times, but Catherine left deep marks. Now I realize part of me always knew our story wasn't over. And now I've found you. Not how I imagined, but still, a part of her lives on. It's enough. Emily stopped walking. I don't want to be Catherine's ghost to you. I don't want you projecting her onto me. You're not Catherine, Richard assured her. You're Emily. Strong, independent, brave in ways Catherine never was. You look like her, have some of her mannerisms, but you're your own person. Sometimes I look in the mirror and see her. It's unsettling. Imagine how I feel, Richard said lightly. I nearly had a heart attack that first day. They laughed together, the tension easing. Back in the car, Emily made a confession. My parents want to get to know you better. Dinner at their place, nothing formal. It would be an honor. The dinner at the Wilsons' house marked a new chapter. George and Richard discovered a shared passion for baseball, spending much of the night debating about the Yankees. Martha and Emily watched them with amused affection. It's good to see George so lively, Martha remarked as they served coffee. He's been so worried about this whole situation. We all were, Emily admitted. But I think we've found a balance. Richard seems like a good man. He is. Catherine was foolish to let him slip away. Martha gently touched her daughter's arm. Sometimes people aren't ready for the love they receive. We can't judge. The simple wisdom of her adoptive mother always surprised her. Months passed. Emily got a promotion, taking on more responsibilities. She began dating Tyler, a college friend who accepted her with all her complicated history. Richard met Rebecca at a conference, a smart, divorced woman who wasn't intimidated when she learned about Emily and Catherine. We all have pasts, Rebecca said during their first dinner with Emily. What matters is how we build our futures. Emily approved. Rebecca didn't try to compete with Catherine's ghost or feel threatened by their unconventional relationship. During Christmas, something unthinkable happened, a joint dinner. The Wilsons, Richard and Rebecca, Emily and Tyler, an extended family, connected by bonds that defied conventional definitions. A toast, George proposed, raising his glass. To family, not the one defined by blood, but the one the heart chooses. Everyone raised their glasses, and Emily felt the last piece of the puzzle fall into place. This was her family. Imperfect, unconventional, born from secrets and loss, but real and hers. Years later, at Emily's wedding to Tyler, Richard had the honor of walking her down the aisle alongside George, two fathers, each representing a different part of her journey. Catherine would be proud, Richard whispered before giving her away. She's here. Emily touched the small daisy brooch on her bouquet. In her own way, she always was. During the reception, Mrs. Jenkins, a special guest, pulled Richard aside. You know, I always thought there was something special about that girl. Now I understand what it was. And what's that? She has the rare ability to turn pain into love, to build bridges where others would build walls. Richard watched Emily dancing with George, laughing freely. I think we all learned that from her. Life went on. Emily started her own business with Richard's support and the Wilsons' blessing. She had children who grew up knowing the full story of their origins, without shame or secrets. Richard and Rebecca built a life together, with Emily always present as the daughter fate unexpectedly gave him. George and Martha grew old, surrounded by love, watching the daughter they raised flourish beyond their wildest dreams. And Catherine? Catherine remained in the daisies Emily planted every year, in the songs she played on her guitar, in the love she chose to give instead of the bitterness she could have nurtured. One Sunday afternoon, years later, Emily took her daughter to the cemetery. Who was she, Mum? The girl asked about the headstone. Someone who gave me life, sweetheart, and taught me that sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in pain. I don't understand. Emily smiled, smoothing her daughter's hair the same golden brown as Catherine's. You'll understand one day. For now, just know we're made of stories. Some sad, some happy. All important. They placed the daisies on the grave and walked away hand in hand, 3 generations of women connected by bonds that transcended time and circumstance. In the car, the girl asked, Is Grandpa Richard coming for dinner tonight? Yes. Grandma Rebecca is making her famous lasagna. And Grandpa George and Grandma Martha. They're coming too. It's Family Sunday, remember? The girl smiled contentedly. To her, having 3 grandfathers and 2 grandmothers was normal. It was her family, and that was enough. Emily looked in the rearview mirror, watching the cemetery fade into the distance. 15 years had passed since that first meeting at the diner. 15 years of discoveries, forgiveness, and rebuilding. Richard had been right that day in the park. The heart has infinite space for love. Catherine, in her own twisted way, had taught them all that. Not through her presence, but through her absence, which had forced them to find each other, to choose one another, to build something beautiful from the ruins of old secrets. Emily's phone rang. It was Richard. "Rebecca wants to know if she can bring dessert." "Tell her she doesn't need to. Mom Martha is already making enough pudding for an army." "She insists. You know how Rebecca is." Emily laughed. "Then let her bring it. There's never too much sweetness at a family gathering." She hung up, smiling. Family. The word had taken on so many meanings over the years. It was no longer about blood or DNA. It was about choice, about love that endures despite adversity, about forgiveness that turns wounds into bridges. When she got home, she found Tyler helping their daughter with homework. "How did it go?" he asked, knowing about her visit to the cemetery. "Good. I think I've finally made peace with everything." Tyler kissed her softly. "I'm glad. You deserve peace." The doorbell rang. The Wilsons had arrived early as usual. George brought wine, Martha her famous pudding. The house filled with voices, laughter, the loving chaos of family gatherings. Richard and Rebecca arrived soon after, completing the picture. As they set the table, Emily watched everyone interacting. Richard and George debating politics, Rebecca and Martha swapping recipes, Tyler entertaining their little girl with magic tricks. "What's on your mind?" Mrs. Jenkins appeared beside her. Yes, even she had been adopted into this unconventional family, invited to every important event. "Just how strange life is. If someone had told me 15 years ago that I'd be here with this family, I wouldn't have believed it. Life has its surprises. The important thing is to be open to them, even when they hurt. Especially when they hurt. The greatest transformations come from pain." Dinner was lively, full of overlapping conversations, shared stories, and future plans. At one point, Emily got up to fetch more water from the kitchen and paused in the doorway, taking in the scene. Her family, built not by design, but by circumstance, strengthened not by ease, but by hard choices, united not by obligation, but by genuine love. Catherine had been gone for so long, yet somehow she had left the greatest gift, the possibility of this family existing. Without her absence, Emily would never have met Richard. Without the painful secret, they wouldn't have learned about forgiveness and acceptance. "Emily?" Tyler called. "Everything okay?" "It's perfect," she replied, returning to the table. And it truly was. Imperfect in its perfection, complicated in its simplicity, extraordinary in its ordinariness. This was her story. A story that began with a man freezing at the sight of a waitress who looked just like his ex-wife. A story of identities uncovered, secrets revealed, families rebuilt. But above all, a story about how love finds unexpected paths, how truth sets you free even when it hurts, and how sometimes you have to lose yourself to truly be found. As the night wore on and the family remained gathered, Emily felt a gentle presence, like a soft breeze. Maybe it was her imagination, maybe it was Catherine giving her final blessing. Either way, Emily smiled, knowing that every person at that table was exactly where they were meant to be. The circle had closed, not with an ending, but with a new beginning, and somewhere between her daughter's laughter and the stories of her many parents, Emily found what she had always been searching for without knowing: complete belonging, unconditional love, true family. The diner was still there, now run by Brenda. Emily would visit her occasionally, drinking the same black coffee that had once united their fates. The bell still chimed when the door opened, but now it was music to her ears, the melody of destiny that had brought her there. Peering through the diner window during one of these visits, she caught her reflection in the glass. Yes, she still looked like Catherine, but now she saw beyond the physical resemblance. She saw her own strength, her own choices, her own story. "More coffee?" Brenda asked. "No, thank you. I should get going. Family's waiting at home." She left the diner with a smile, leaving the past behind and embracing the future. A future built on hard truths, but solid in its foundation of love and forgiveness. And so, what began as a painful mystery became the greatest blessing of their lives. Because sometimes the best families are the ones we choose to build from the fragments life hands us. The end. If you also believe in the power of forgiveness and the families the heart chooses, leave a like and subscribe. Tell us, do you have an unconventional family story too? We'd love to read it in the comments.